Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HeroQuest, and if you've been watching the channel, you may know that it is part of my quest to find a way to ascertain a difficulty rating, a sort of power level for any given encounter or skirmish that you might face when playing HeroQuest. This isn't something that's going to be very interesting for people who are just trying to get through the trial, or even Keller's Keep or Return of the Witchlord. Playing the game is just fun as is at face value. But for those of us who want to homebrew something and really calculate the difficulty of the rooms, the difficulty of the skirmishes in the hallways, the difficulty overall of the quest, and how it stacks up against other quests without having to spend countless hours balancing and fine-tuning, I know that there have to be ways to calculate the actual difficulty of a given set of monsters. Now, a lot of folks at this point might be tempted to recommend me to some of the various difficulty calculators that currently exist out there. To my knowledge, they're not accurate. A lot of people want to just multiply or add values together and do so with all of the monsters that might be on a given board. But this really disregards how much more difficult a room is when there is more than one monster in it. It disregards how much easier skirmishes and hallways are because you're facing the monsters one at a time. It casts aside some extremely simple mathematical facts in favor of oversimplifying in order to just quickly get to an answer. But that answer is neither useful nor relevant to me. And so I set out to develop a new way to calculate difficulty, a way that I know is arbitrary because it can only be arbitrary. But if you bear with me, I think you'll find that this might be very useful for you whenever you are trying to make your own HeroQuest campaigns. Let us begin. First of all, you are looking at OpenOffice Calc. OpenOffice is a free open source clone of the Microsoft suite of Office tools. I'll put a link in the description below if you're interested in downloading it. And all the tools come together. So yes, I've got OpenOffice Calc, which is your Excel, OpenOffice Writer, which is Word, surprise, OpenOffice Draw, which I do believe is our presentation software, and OpenOffice Base, which I think is the Access clone, given its red coloring. I don't know what OpenOffice Math is. I haven't used Office in like 10 years, so cut me some slack. The reason that we're using a spreadsheet program and we don't have like some epic dragons and stuff in the background is because we need the formulas that a spreadsheet program offers in order to make these calculations very quickly and very effectively. So the first thing I'm going to do is just populate one of these fields. I'm just going to give it a nice label, BP. Oh, and that's very small. So we're going to click on that and zoom it in. Okay, and next I want to know a given monster's defense dice. Next, I want to know their attack dice. And actually, I want the attack dice to be up here, BP at the bottom. You can format this however you want once we get this really going, because I'm really going to be showing you how to make these calculations in your own accessible spreadsheet software. And if the concept of spreadsheets is still lost on you by the end of this video, don't feel bad. I'm going to have this sheet available as a download and put on my Patreon. You can recreate it for free, but I just need a platform to put it on, so that's where it will be. Now, I could factor in a monster's mind points, but this would be extremely arbitrary. There is no direct tie to a monster's mind points versus the rest of their stats, so really it would be pretty pointless to even include the stat. I know there's going to be people that might take issue with that at face value, and you guys can absolutely let me know why you would include mind points in such a calculation, but I'm not going to because I cannot see their usefulness. Instead, I will put the monster's ability to make a ranged attack, and this will include absolutely anything he could be doing, and anything that monster could be doing. I'm going to go ahead and put 4 fields so that we have up to 4 ranged attacks that the monster could make. And if I put a monster at the very end of a hallway in HeroQuest, and I have your hero come around the corner, then if your hero continues to roll 1s on their movement dice every single turn, it's going to be many, many opportunities for ranged attacks before they finally get to the monster. And that is, while an impractical scenario, an unlikely scenario, still a possible scenario. However, I don't feel like putting a million ranged attacks. I just think that it's not that practical. So instead, I will say that you're going to have probably just 2 opportunities to make ranged attacks as a monster before a hero is able to close in and get in those attacks. You can say there are monsters in the game that have more than 2 chaos spells, but generally these are not attack spells, and you can modify the spreadsheet again however you need to make this make more sense and be more precise if you feel that it needs to be. So attack dice, defense dice, body points, ranged, and now we have an overall difficulty level. With that being done, the difficulty levels are going to be in this row, and we are going to make a calculation in this cell. And this is where spreadsheet programs really have usefulness. They're extremely useful for formatting information, but they have an extreme usefulness for actually making calculations. Okay, so this is kind of how I have everything set up. I have my cells here in this area of the spreadsheet. You don't have to have yours here. You could have them at the very top of the spreadsheet. You could have them all the way to the left, but pay attention to what I'm going to call cell addresses. Every single cell on a spreadsheet has a sort of address. It has a name by which you can reference it. And say this cell here is C13. You know, because it's in the C column, A, B, C, 13th row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So this is C13. This is C12. This is C11. This is B11. This is A11, A10, and so on. I'm going to be using the cell addresses in my formulas. So if your overall arrangement of this is anywhere else on your spreadsheet, it'll look a little bit different. But don't be worried about that. Don't be afraid of the spreadsheet. Follow along with me and we'll see if we can figure it out. Now, I do have a formula in mind. I have worked out a formula that I feel is perfect for what I am trying to do in calculating difficulty of any given HeroQuest skirmish, whether it is homebrew, official, UK, US, contemporary, classic, it doesn't matter. We can figure it out now. We can have a number that we can apply to the skirmish as a whole. What we're going to do is go click on the difficulty cell or the cell next to difficulty, and we're going to type in equal sign. That's not an equal sign. Equal sign. The equal sign is going to tell your spreadsheet program, whether it's Excel or Calc or whatever, hey dummy, I'm about to type in a formula. Pay attention to my syntax. And we're going to do left parenthesis. This is because we're about to make a calculation that needs to take priority. It needs to be calculated before the order of operations kicks in. It's actually a part of the order of operations, but you know. We're going to click on a cell, and we're actually going to click on the one next to attack dice. See how that auto fills it in? It's C8. That's really handy. I really like that. We're going to go back down to the cell and click times. We're going to use the asterisk for that because that's how this program likes to say times or multiplied by. We're going to click on another cell, this time body points. And now we're going to click on the cell again, the calculation, the formula cell I'm making. And we're going to put our end parenthesis. Now so far this is looking suspiciously like a certain one that exists out there, but trust you me, its principles are different. We're going to times this by another expression, this time another parenthesis, and that's going to be defend dice, which is going to be C9 in this case, plus 1, and we're going to end that expression. Then we are going to make sure that all of this is wrapped up in its own set of parentheses. Then we will add range 1, and we will add range 2. Because to me, these are things that are added. So the difficulty for a monster that has no value is 0, right? You won't ever actually encounter such a monster. But if you did encounter a monster that had attack dice of 1, defend dice of 1, and 1 body point, we have a difficulty of 2. That, my friends, is a correct difficulty. So, what is the idea behind this formula? This formula is taking a scenario, a situation that I made up in my head to try to determine how every monster behaves differently, how every monster is different as long as the stats are different. You see, the name of the monster, the lore, the appearance, these things don't matter mechanically. So we strip all of that away and we are left with its stats. We have mainly 5 stats. We've got movement, mind points, attack, defend, body. Plus, we have whether or not that monster has the capability to attack you at a ranged distance. If it does, what can it attack you with becomes relevant. Not necessarily the method by which it attacks you. So we really don't care if it's a magic spell or a crossbow or what. The fact that it can attack you at all is what needs to be considered, and we need to add those up. So in this example, we have a 2. Why is it a 2? Because in this calculation, which is a monster that I have made up that has 1 attack dice, 1 defend dice, and 1 body points, he's going to be able to attack you for 2 body points before you are able to kill it. Now, how does that make sense? All right, so you are a hero, you are an adventurer, you are playing HeroQuest, and you decide to open a door, and you do that on the very last square. That is your movement. You have no movement left, you have no actions left. You land on a tile and you open a door that is adjacent to you. When you do that, the room is open. The room is available for all to see on the board. And there's a monster in the room. And here's the monster. I'm just going to call it a blob. It's a slime. It is very weak. However, it is Zargon's turn. So we have gotten rid of the mind points because I've kind of explained they're irrelevant in most scenarios. The only relevance we can pull is what the monster can do for magic. The mind points are arbitrarily enough that we can disregard them completely and just include the ranged attacks. In this situation, the slime has no ranged attacks, but it is the slime's turn. We are disregarding the movement because we are assuming that all monsters are either far enough away to do ranged attacks or close enough to do melee attacks, and are always in one of these 2 states. And if they are ranged, then we are going to assume that the distance between the hero and the monster is closed between this turn and the next. And we are assuming that it's closed again between this next turn and the one after. And we are assuming that the monster will now be in melee after that. For this particular scenario, the slime goes immediately up to the hero and attacks for 1. The slime has now attacked the hero 1 time for 1 body point. It has 1 attack die and it has rolled a skull. For this calculation, we are assuming that the monster never misses. The hero now takes his turn. The hero rolls attack dice, however many the hero has, it doesn't matter. We're not calculating the hero's difficulty, although we can use the system to do so. We are not changing the difficulty of the monster just because the hero is weaker or stronger. This is a tool for Zargons to use to discern the difficulty of a skirmish at face value. Not how that relates to the strength of the heroes, but for the heroes to be able to see that number and say, yeah, we can take on a room of 300, no problem at all. We can't do a room of 650 yet, though. And we now say that the hero scores 1 successful skull against the slime. But because the slime has a defend dice, chances are, in this scenario, in this maximum difficulty scenario, the slime will roll its 1 defend dice and successfully block that hero's attack. It is now Zargon's turn. The slime attacks the hero again, and the hero loses a 2nd body point. The hero now attacks the slime on this 3rd round. And because we have already considered that the slime had a defend dice and successfully blocked once, we're going to say that this time the slime does not block successfully and suffers 1 BP of damage. This is where the slime dies. However, if the slime, which has now been defeated after only giving the hero 2 body points of damage, had 2 attack dice, then the 2 attacks that it would land on the hero would be double, which means its difficulty would double from 2 to 4. If the slime had 3 attack dice, it would triple from its original value, so its difficulty would be 6. Let's pretend the slime just has 1 attack dice, and let's say it had 2 body points. The reason that this is 4 is because the slime would get its first attack, which we are assuming all monsters get the first attack, and hence maximizing their danger potential. The hero would attack back, but the slime would successfully defend. The slime now attacks the hero again. The hero has lost 2 BP at this point. When the hero attacks again, we assume the hero successfully gets 1 skull, and at this time, the slime does not. That means the slime has suffered a body point of damage. It still has a body point of damage, so it attacks the hero again, and now the hero attacks the slime. We're going to say the slime is able to defend this time, And then we are going to say that the slime attacks the hero. So now the hero suffered 4. When the hero attacks back, the slime loses another body point, and this kills it. It's unable to inflict any more damage, and so that damage sits at 2. If we have 2 defend dice, then this value goes up by 2, because now the slime is only going to be able to take 6 BP off of the hero. So this scenario that I've built in my mind, you can recognize immediately that it is very arbitrary. But I have to argue the point. I have to press that it doesn't matter what system you use. They are all arbitrary, because you could very easily walk into a room as a hero with 1 body point and 1 attack die, and the room has 2 Chaos Warriors in it, and they can roll all shields when they're attacking you, and they could roll all skulls when you're attacking them, and this could go on for as long as it takes for you, a single hero, to destroy 2 Chaos Warriors in a room without having suffered a single body point of damage. Is it likely to happen that way? No. But we need to have some sort of context, some sort of guideline that does help us. So we do have to come up with some arbitrary scenario that has a set of rules. And so it is by this set of rules that this spreadsheet works. That the monsters are accounted for in their defend dice, that we account for their body points, that we account for their attack dice, and that we let them get hits on the hero if they are ranged. If my slime has the ability to, say, throw a slime ball at the hero, like it has that ranged attack, but it's just 1 attack dice, then we're not going to multiply everything that we've gotten. We're going to add that onto its final value, bringing it up to 7, because we're closing the distance between the slime and the hero in the next turn. The rest of the calculations will be performed multiplicatively instead of additively, because we don't need to continue adding ranged attacks, because the monster is just as strong as a melee, so it's going to be right up next to the hero. So if it does get the opportunity to attack twice, a range 1 time and then a range another time, then its total difficulty will be 8. For the most part, I'm just interested in melee. So we are now going to calculate a goblin. A goblin has 2 attack, 1 defend, 1 body point. A goblin in my system has a difficulty rating of 4. And an orc in my system has 3 attack dice, 2 defend dice, 1 body point. The official orc difficulty is a 9. It has more than double the difficulty of a goblin. Let's now do a mummy. We're going to do the US mummy. It has 3 attack dice, 4 defend dice, and 2 body points. The difficulty of a mummy is 30. Now, you might not think that that's necessarily the case. A mummy isn't that much stronger than an orc. I mean, but there is a reason that the game system comes with 2 mummies and 8 orcs. Our Dread Warrior of the contemporary system has the same stats as the classic Chaos Warrior, the US Chaos Warrior, 4, 4, and 3. That brings up to 60. A Chaos or Dread Warrior has a difficulty of 60. Now, does this mean that you're necessarily going to have a harder time with a Dread Warrior than, say, a Mummy? I mean, it all is down to dice rolls. It's all down to luck of the roll. So this does have to account a little bit for the different number of dice, but it can't account for RNG. So you literally do have absolutely every shot at taking down multiple hard monsters before you take down an orc that is just really being stubborn and rolling defend against your attack every single turn. So please account for that disclaimer, but that's every system. That is every system that you're going to find, because you can RNG win or RNG lose. All right, let's do the UK version of a Famir. That's going to have 3 attack, 3 defend, and 1 body point. So that gives it a difficulty of 12. Not so threatening, are you, Monolizard? Okay, so what about a monster like the Polar Warbear? The Polar Warbear can attack twice. So can we account for that? Yes, we can. We can. Let's put in the rest of the Polar Warbear's stats. The Polar Warbear has 6 body points, which is just ridiculous, 4 attack dice, and 3 defend dice. We would say that it has a difficulty of 72, but since the Polar Warbear can attack twice, and its attack is actually 4 attack dice, I don't know why I had 3 there, we would have a difficulty of 96 rather. So because it can attack twice, we're going to put 8 attack dice down. And the reason for this is we're not accounting for the hero defending at all. We are accounting for the monsters just hitting a dummy. The monsters are attacking this straw man. How much damage are they able to do? At maximum, if they roll all skulls every single turn and there is no defense on the hero side, it's going to be 192. 192 body points is what the Polar Warbear would eventually take off if we follow the formula of it being attacked and then losing a shield, or failing to roll a shield, one more shield every single time it defended until it successfully got attacked and lost a body point, and then refilled its shields, and then each shield would successively get not rolled until you attacked its body again successfully for 1. Again, not likely, very arbitrary, but it does give us a way to calculate that I feel is a little bit more looked into than the classic system of just add all the body points together. Okay, so we need a way to actually identify the skirmish difficulty, not just the enemy, right? So we have a room full of monsters. What's the difficulty rating of that room? We have another formula that we're going to use now. Okay, we need to copy this formula over to these other cells, and we need to make sure the formula refers to the above values in its own column, not the first column. So to do that, we're just going to click on this cell, and then we've got a tiny little handle in the lower right-hand corner of the cell. Your cursor will become an X if you hover over this handle. Click it and drag it to the right. And we're going to drag it all the way over to the very end of our last monster. And I think it worked. We have a bunch of zeros. That's because there's no values in the columns above these. We'll go ahead and start filling them in with zeros for the ranged attacks. And then we'll just throw in some arbitrary attack dice and defend dice and body points. And we can see those values updating in the formula side of things. This is looking a little bit better now. It's looking a little bit more informative, looking a little bit more useful. At this point, I would highly advise you to save your work if you're following along, because this program likes to crash from time to time, and when it does, it's not good. So skirmish difficulty is what we are calling this, and we may continue. All right, we have made it to this point. We have a table, and I have added an additional label for total difficulty that's going to calculate the total skirmish difficulty for any monsters you want to put in this table. Now, you don't have to have just 6 monsters. You can extend this out by extending the formula out, and you can have 7 monsters, 8 monsters, 12 monsters. You can even have the maximum amount of monsters that can attack you during a game of HeroQuest. What do you think that number is, by the way? Comment down below and I'll give you a hint. It's not 8. So, if we now want to determine the total difficulty for more than one monster, what do? When you encounter 2 goblins in a room, it's not the same as encountering 2 individual goblins. It is, according to this system, the same as encountering 3 individual goblins because of the opportunities they have to attack you. If you walk into a room and there are 3 goblins, that's not the same as encountering 3 individual goblins. That is the same as encountering 6 individual goblins because of the opportunities to attack. So, in order to correctly calculate this, we are now going to put in, I've got a label here for total difficulty. This total difficulty label is going to calculate the first monster only. The next one over is going to calculate the total of both of the first 2 monsters together. Our third is going to calculate the 3 monsters. Our fourth is going to calculate the 4, fifth for 5, and sixth for 6. And you can, like I said, extend this formula out. We'll do the first 6 monsters. So basically every cell is calculating the monster above it and everybody to the left. So what are we doing? We are going to say this equals this, and that's that. For our second monster, we're going to say that this difficulty equals the first one plus the first monster's difficulty plus the second monster's difficulty. Enter. And that comes up with a correct calculation of 12. Now, if I make sure our third, fourth, fifth, and sixth monsters don't have any numbers in them, I'm going to do equals the previous difficulty plus all 3 of the monsters above, and that comes up with 20. This number here is right now an incorrect number. It's not calculating anything valid. We don't care what this number is though, because there's no monster information above it. As soon as we put information in, however, it's going to give us an accurate, updated difficulty rating. I said before that encountering 3 goblins at the same time is the same as encountering 6 individually because of the opportunities for attack, and that correctly adds those up into the 24, which would be 4 times 6. Now, this next formula is going to be this plus this plus this plus this plus this, and it comes up with 36, but it's irrelevant because there's no monster data. As soon as we put monster data in, we get our correct 40, because encountering 4 goblins at the same time is the same as encountering 10 individually, and 4 times 10 is 40. Encountering 5 goblins would be the same as encountering 15, and encountering 6 would be the same as encountering 21 individually, by the way. If you notice the mathematical pattern, it's adding 1 more plus everything previously. We'll put in our formula for this one, and we're just about done with this entire project. As soon as we enter in the last value, I'll really be able to wow you with some cool monster calculations. Let's put in some monsters. A room full of goblins. 6 goblins, all 6 goblins. A difficulty of 84. And that, my friends, that's a good number. We're starting to get into the real usefulness of this chart. If we want to, we can go ahead and take out, by the way, all of these values, and then we can just disregard the difficulty rating that appears below that, because it's doing incomplete calculations, so it's not relevant to us right now. Don't ever make the mistake of putting in 1 monster and saying, oh, I put in 1 monster, all the rest of these are zeros. The number under monster 6 has 24, that must mean 6 of these monsters is 24. It's not set up to work that way. It's set up to read all of the values that are put in for all 6. So if you want to correctly get the skirmish difficulty rating for 1 monster, or 6 of that monster rather, you've got to populate all of the fields. Anyways, I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we started to make some homebrew monsters? Let's say that you finally encounter Zargon, right? And Zargon, he has to be the biggest and baddest of all. But before we do Zargon, let's do the current, or one of the current strongest monsters there is in HeroQuest. Let's do the Frozen Horror himself. And I'm going to give you a number that's going to blow your mind. This guy has 5 attack dice. He has 4 defend dice. And he has 6 body points. He has a difficulty rating of 150. That is the same as encountering, let's just grab calculator here for some perspective, 150 divided by 4. That's the same as encountering 38 goblins individually. And you might think, well, your chance of success for defeating the Frozen Horror is probably much higher than encountering these goblins individually. It really just depends on what hero you're using. Your heroes have their own stats as well, and we can put the attack, defend dice, and body points of a hero to get their difficulty rating as well. I really should put a lock on some of these cells to keep us from changing the difficulty or the total difficulty. We'll make the background orange. Does that make sense? We'll make the background of the upper part green. All right, so if you did encounter somebody like Zargon, and I would actually love to do a podcast where we discuss the end of HeroQuest, the very end of all ends, when your party finally stops playing, what's your last boss encounter like? I like to imagine that somebody like Zargon is pretty awesome. They have just so much power. The Frozen Horror would be shivering in fear. But if you were to go pretty realistic with at least like a first form, you might do 6 of everything. 6 attack, 6 defend, and 6 body points, because that's the maximum amount of dice you're going to have with the game system. So 6 kind of makes sense to me for attack and defense. Plus nobody is that strong in HeroQuest anyway. That's already 2 more defense dice than the Frozen Horror has, and 1 more attack dice. That gives us a rating of 252 just for a Zargon character alone. Now, if you wanted to double this and make 12 of everything, That gives a difficulty rating of 1872, which is pretty tough. Let's say that this was really just an awesome sorcerer, and you had 6 of them in the room. 6 of these sorcerers times their individual difficulty ratings gives a total difficulty rating of 5,292. Does this number mean anything? Not really, because you're probably never going to have a scenario in which you run into 6 of these guys all by themselves. Now, or all together rather. Something I want to point out, now that I've shown these numbers off, I want to point out, like, again, this is arbitrary. It's not going to provide you with an exact anything. It's just giving you a suggestion. And if you copy any given room from any quest of HeroQuest, then that room obviously is going to have the same difficulty as if you encountered that room in the quest in which it was presented. The difference might be that your heroes might be upgraded a little bit, but HeroQuest is not truly a game where progression is permanent. You do have some opportunities to get heroes' treasure, pick it off of their body, maybe give it to the next hero who rolls and joins your party, but you don't have to do that. And it is entirely possible for you to, for example, beat the game system's 14th quest with one surviving hero. This surviving hero might not have gotten the opportunity to collect treasure off the bodies of their fellow heroes before going into the next quest. But if that's the case, then you're starting Keller's Keep, for example, with one experienced kitted hero and 3 brand new heroes. If this hero gets killed in Keller's Keep's first quest, and the 3 remaining heroes complete that quest without getting that hero character's equipment, you're starting the next quest in Keller's Keep with 4 brand new heroes. You have to consider that an expansion absolutely could be played with a fresh party of heroes. That doesn't mean that it's going to be unchallenging. It doesn't mean that it won't be necessarily balanced, or that it will be balanced. It's going to be very difficult to figure out where that sweet spot is. So you may need to apply some additional home rules as to how you kit your heroes for expansions that you create that are meant to be played with experienced heroes. Your party may not always have everything that they need going into an expansion. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they will be rich. They will have so much gold. They'll be hiring mercenaries left and right. They'll have all the talismans they need. They'll have all the experience. They'll never have died once. And so your party will all be the same party members as they were when they first started the trial at the very beginning of your long campaign. That doesn't always happen, but it is a possibility. And so that sort of variable is just impossible to track party to party, table by table, Zargon to Zargon, Morcar by Morcar. It's not something we can really account for. So that is why, no matter what your heroes are, these numbers stay consistent. These numbers stay the same. It doesn't matter if you're going to go against a goblin with a wizard who has nothing, who is brand new, who just used all of his spells and just has a dagger left, or a barbarian who has completed the Frozen Horror in one piece and has all of the artifacts that come with that experience. The monster difficulty will still be the same, and it's just a matter of perspective as to whether that difficulty is hard or easy. Now, something that I want to point out that's very important when using any tool or chart that works like this one is the numbers that it gives you could be wildly different depending on how you enter the monster information. For a room that just has 1 goblin and 1 orc, for example, I have placed the goblin's stats here under Monster 1, the orc's stats here under Monster 2. And we have a total difficulty of 4 for the goblin. We have a total difficulty of 9 for the orc. This equals a total difficulty in the room, the skirmish difficulty, of 17 for both of the monsters together. That is because of the opportunities, again, for attack. So it's not 4 plus 19. It's actually 4 plus 9 and then plus 4 again. That is assuming that we're taking one of these monsters out before the other. The way that this works is it's going to assume that we're taking out the rightmost monster first, in this case, the orc. If you take out the orc first, the goblin has more opportunities to attack you, and that's why the number is 17. So if you're wanting to get the lowest number of difficulty for a given skirmish, a given room, then you'll want to put your weakest monsters on the left and your strongest monsters on the right. And this is a great way to plan storming into a room and taking out the strongest monsters first. This is the difficulty that it should have if you approach the room in that way. However, if you really want to get the maximum amount of difficulty for a room, you should put your highest difficulty rated monsters on the left. You should enter them first and put your lowest difficulty rated monsters to the right of that. So you can see that the difficulties are the same, they're just switched now. I put my orc in column 1 and my goblin in column 2. My orc has a difficulty of 9, my goblin a difficulty of 4. But the total difficulty is no longer 17. It's 22, 5 points. The calculation is now 9 plus 4 plus 9 again, because the orc now has more opportunities to attack. So you're taking out the goblin first in this scenario, and so that's what drives this skirmish calculation, this difficulty rating, to be even higher, even though it's the exact same two monsters. So I say all of that to say this: if you're going to use any system that works or functions just like this one, or this one in particular, then make sure that you enter the monsters that you are encountering room by room in the same order every time. If you are inclined to put the strongest monster first, then do that every single time. If you don't, and you use this in an inconsistent fashion, if you don't have an order by which you place the monsters by default left to right every single time, then the numbers you get will be a bit skewed, because the numbers you get will be assuming the heroes are going to storm into this room and take out the weakest monster first. But then when the heroes enter this room, they're going to take out the strongest monster first. And that's not going to give you accurate difficulty results. If you do it the exact same way every time, then yeah, the heroes might not actually behave the way that you want them to, but at least you'll know that the difficulties that you have laid out in your design are consistent with one another. And that much is important. So use this tool and definitely study how the difficulties change and fluctuate from room to room in the base game and in the expansions wildly. Anyway, guys, I will be sharing this spreadsheet on my Patreon. I'll be putting it at the heroic difficulty. If you'd like a crack at it and you'd like to modify it, then feel free to do so. The formulas are definitely things you can add on to or change to suit your individual needs. And if you need support with this sort of thing, just come into the Discord and I can absolutely help you. You can make your own too. You can just follow the steps in this video. You don't have to go to the Patreon to get this. I just have to have a place to put it, so that's where it'll go. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. If you might use a system like this already, let me know how it works out. And if you want to use this one and you do apply it to your homebrew, let me know if it succeeded. Thanks as always. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.